This is Mr. and Mrs. English and their son Jack, who are travelling on the first Airbridge flight to Canada. Mr. English, why are you going to Canada?
Well, mainly there are two reasons. Firstly, my wife always wanted to go to Canada. And secondly, I find having been in my own business for the last 17 years, I think there's more scope.
This is Mr. and Mrs. English and their son Jack, who are going on the first Airbridge flight to Canada. Mr. English, why are you going to Canada?
Well, there are two reasons why I wish to go to Canada. One, my wife always wanted to go to Canada, and the opportunity has come along now that I can go to Canada. The second one, I have been in business on my own account for this last 17 years, and I find that taxation is now crippling the small man, and I think the scope in Canada would be much greater.
What are you going to do in Canada, Mrs. English? Are you hoping to settle down and have a nice home such as you have in England?
Well, I'd like as nice a home as I have in England, even better if I can, but I am going to look for a job, any kind of a job, really.
And how about Jack? What are you going to do when you get to Canada, Jack?
I'd like to try forestry work.
Why forestry work?
Well, I think it's healthy. I believe there's more money in it. It's got a chance for a young man of my age to get on well out there.
All right. This is the English family. Mr. and Mrs. English and their son Jack, and they're going on the first Airbridge flight to Canada. Mr. English, what's making you take this great decision?
Well, there are two reasons why. One, my wife always wished to go to Canada. The opportunity has now arisen that I can go. Secondly, having been in business on my own account for the past 17 years, I find now that taxation is crippling the small man, and I think the scope in Canada is much greater for somebody with his own initiative and enterprise.
What are you going to do in Canada, Mrs. English?
Find a job, any kind of a job, really.
And what about a home? Have you any ideas about a home? What are you going to do when you first get there?
Well, we haven't anywhere to go to, so most likely have to stay in a hotel for the time being, to get a home as soon as possible.
And how about Jack? What are you going to do when you get to Canada, Jack?
Well, I like to try forestry work out there.
What makes you think about forestry work?
Well, it's more healthy, and I had some tough jobs, and I think it'd be a better job for me, and all that. I haven't got much brains for this shop assistance, so I'd like to try forestry.
Good. Mr. English, have you a job to go to in Canada?
No, not at the moment. I have two interviews which I hope to take up on arrival there. Whether anything comes of them is problematical, but I'm quite prepared to take the first job that comes along that gives me a living wage.
What are you going to do in Canada, Mrs. English?
Find a job, I hope. Any kind of a job.
Got a home to go to or anything?
No, nothing at all. We'll most probably stay at a hotel or apartments when we get there and try and find a home as soon as possible.
Jack, what kind of a job are you going to take up when you get to Canada?
Well, I like to try forestry. I think it's a healthy life. I want to try and develop myself. And I always have liked open air work. I think I'd like to try this job.
Okay. What kind of job are you going to do when you get into Canada,
Well, I
Jack?
do forestry work.
What kind of job are you going to take when you get to Canada, Jack?
Well, I like to do forestry work. I always wanted to do that sort of work. It's healthy. So I thought
What kind of job are you going to do when you get to Canada, Jack?
well, I like to try forestry work. I've always been keen on it. I like open air work. I think it'd be better in life.
Good.
I'm leaving 2 daughters behind and 3 grandchildren, but I sincerely hope that in a couple of years they'll be out with us.
Well, we've built our boats, and now we're going to have a go.
We are leaving behind 2 daughters and 3 grandchildren and a host of friends, but I sincerely hope that my 2 daughters and sons-in-law and grandchildren will be out with me in a couple of years.
Well, who knows? We've built our boats, and let's have a go.